Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming to this afternoon's performance of The Most Beautiful Room in New York, written by the great Adam Gopnik. My name is Christine Scarfuto. I am the Literary Manager here at Wharf Theater. And this is part of a really special series that we do here at Wharf called the Sunday Symposium. After the third Sunday after we open, for each show that we do here, we have like a deeper dive into a conversation about a theme or subject related to the play, or sometimes, when we're very lucky, we actually get to have the playwright here to talk a little bit about the process. So this talk will last about 45 minutes to an hour. If you have to leave during that time, please just walk out. We will not be offended. I know some
won't be offended, Christine.
Well, Adam might be offended, but I won't be offended. So yeah, go whenever you need to go. It's totally fine. Exit is right over there.
The re-entry is right over here, though, so make a full circuit.
Exactly. So Adam has been a staff writer for The New Yorker since 1986. 31 years. And has also written a number of books, from novels to collections of essays. Some of the most well-known of those are Paris to the Moon and Through the Children's Gate. And I believe you have a new book coming out.
I do. I have a new book coming out in September called At the Stranger's Gate, which is a kind of prequel to The Children's Gate.
Right, yes.
About coming to New York in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm. And Adam has also done a number of lectures all over the world. He's appeared on Charlie Rose. I think he's one of the smartest, most cultured people I've ever met in my entire life. And he is also the writer of the book for The Most Beautiful Room in New York, which you just saw on stage today. And as we said before, the composer for this was David Shire.
You notice I made a modest face when she paid me that great compliment, but I didn't actually contradict her, which is what I should have done if I were genuinely a modest person.
No. But anyway, so like I said, we're very lucky to have Adam here today. So Adam, most people know you as an essayist or a novelist, but you have actually been pretty obsessed with the great American musicals since you were young.
Since I was very young. It's one of those funny things, my parents were of a generation in the 1950s, sons of an immigrant grocer and an immigrant nurse, who rejected the Broadway theater, rejected American musicals because they were the taste of their parents. And they embraced, Bach and Webern and 12-tone rows and
God. It is a vulgar art form.
Yes, it's a vulgar art form, right? But I loved it, and I loved to go to my grandparents, and I would sit in the basement. All grandparents had a basement in those years, and they had every cast out, My Fair Lady and Camelot and Dan Yankees and The Music Man, all those wonderful original cast albums. My grandparents actually took me to see Fiddler on the Roof in its original production with Zero Mostel. And I was 8 or 9 at the time, and it just totally turned me on. My parents were scandalized. They would have preferred I went to a burlesque house to see a Broadway musical. But I loved it. And so yes, it was always something that I loved and internalized and ate. And then when I got to be a teenager, in a strange way, I grew up in Canada, and strange things happen in Canada. Because one of the things is that we don't understand as clearly the difference between what's hip and what's not hip, because we are not hip people as a rule. So we don't have that as a working hypothesis. So I didn't understand, generationally though, I love the Beatles and the Stones and all that, I didn't understand it wasn't hip to love Rodgers and Hammerstone. That seemed to me just as good and just as interesting. It's funny when the great Canadian comedian, Martin Short, says the same thing. He spent the 60s copying Sinatra records, and it wasn't until he got to America that he found out that wasn't a cool thing to do if you were 21 years old in 1971. So I spent my misspent adolescence finding old copies of Rodgers and Hart musicals, scratched LPs that I could turn up in secondhand stores. So yeah, I got totally obsessed with musical theater at that point, kind of in an archival way, the old the princess musicals that P.G. Wodehouse and Jerome Kern wrote, all of Rodgers and Hart, And all I had in those days, as all anybody had, was a folk guitar that was designed to play down in the valley on. And I would be picking out these immensely complicated Richard Rodgers melodies, or attempting to, with the those great harmonies. So yeah, this is a long-winded way of saying yes. I've always loved musical theater and always been marginally obsessed with it.
Did you write any musicals when you were younger?
I did indeed. When I was in college, I went to McGill with my then girlfriend, now wife, Martha. I wrote the closest thing we had at the little college show, and it was a musical about, which I wrote the words and music for, about the life of Vladimir Tatlin, the great Russian constructivist architect, and his dream of building a Russian constructivist skyscraper.
That sounds like a hit.
I was sure, Christine. So I wrote it, and it had some fabulous numbers in it, where constructivists confronted futurists, who confronted suprematists. And I came to New York in the fall of 1980, it's in my new book, convinced that I was 6 weeks from Broadway with this thing, because who would not want to put on a show about the battles of Russian constructivist architects in 1917? And it was actually, it's kind of the monument for the Third International, that's what it was. Well, 6 weeks later I found out nobody was interested in it. And I intended to be, very seriously, I wanted to be a songwriter, I wanted to be in musical theater. And so I had this show in my satchel, and I had a tape, a cassette tape. In those days, there were those hissy, terrible cassette tapes were made then, of songs from the show and other songs I'd written very much in kind of Rodgers and Hart manner, with me singing horribly. Demo, I would download, they were demos, they were just merely demos. And we knew someone who had once been to dinner with someone who had the phone number of someone who knew Art Garfunkel's psychotherapist. It was a connection of that kind. It wasn't exactly that, it was about that many steps away. And we sent it to this person, and I expected to hear from Art even before I heard from Broadway, and never did, still have not. I have met Paul Simon, but I still have not heard from Art Garfunkel. So it didn't catch. I wish it had, Christine. It's the one thing I've learned in life is that and this sounds like musical comedy philosophy, but it's true, is to pursue your dreams. And I think if I had stuck the 6 years it would have taken me to make an entry there, I would have been doing this in 1986. Instead, I turned over another stone and I started writing, and 6 years later I was at the New Yorker, which was hardly a tragic fate, but it was a different fate. It was something else, which I loved and inspired to too. So that's how it happened. And then years later, many years later, all through all that time I continued to write songs and skits and, for the kids and my wife and family and all. I was the boring, tedious guy at a birthday party who has the song he's going to play. And then Dave Shire approached me about writing a musical. And I think to David's enormous shock, I said yes instantly, because he thought that I was a horrible snob and would have no interest in it. But of course I knew David's work very well, and I knew that it's the first thing I would want to do. David and I snapped to it, and a mere 8 years later, here we are with the show on here at Wharf.
Which is actually the average amount of time it takes to write a musical.
Musicals are like elephants. They have a very long gestation period. And it's interesting to talk about why that is too.
Yeah. Well, maybe before we get into that, what were those first few meetings with David Shire like?
Well, they actually speak to this. We met through his wonderful wife, Dee Dee Khan, who you all know as Frenchie in Greece. And she had approached me at a benefit and said, would you be interested in writing a musical with my husband, David Shire? And I said, of course, instantly. Then we got together. I had some satiric ideas that one of my closest friends is the wonderful novelist Meg Wolitzer. Meg and I, Meg's another musical lover, had some satiric ideas. And David shook his knowledgeable head sorrowfully and said, the problem with doing anything satirical, we had an idea for a show called Blue Island, where, does anyone remember the old British comedy, Passport to Pimlico? Ring a bell with anyone? It was about Pimlico, a neighborhood, working-class neighborhood in London, becomes an independent country. And we've had an idea where the Upper West Side became an independent country. This is in about 2007. And 2008, it must have been. And David said, those are funny ideas. We had other ideas like that. He said, but by the time we get it on, it'll be dated. We can't do a topical satirical idea. And I thought, how long can it take? A year, 2 years, 8 years later, I see that. And then David had liked a book of mine, Through the Children's Gate, and he had wanted to adapt it. He thought it would make an interesting musical about a family kind of coming of age in the years after 9/11, which receded oddly from this show. One of the first songs David and I wrote together was called "If You See Something, Say Something," which was trying to catch the mood of that time. That vanished as many vestigial things did. And then we worked on that for a bit, David, who's just limitlessly fertile, wrote "If You See Something, Say Something," music, I wrote the words, and then a song called "Through the Children's Gate," and so on. And then we realized that we were writing the most boring musical ever written because it was about the life of a writer, a guy based on me. And writers don't do anything. They sit in rooms. And if you try to enliven a writer's life, has there ever been a successful play about a writer?
I'm trying to think.
After the Fall, I guess, is the closest. Is he a writer in that, or just, we know he's a writer?
I don't actually know that play.
The Arthur Miller play about himself, right? I think he's actually a writer there. It's a very boring play. Anyway, writers are very boring people. And then we had the idea of maybe making it a cook, because there was a cook's contest in the middle of that book. And once we started doing that, the thing started to come to life much more. And so we decided to tell a similar story about a family of 4, but to make it about a chef and his wife and their kids. And curiously enough, we knew 2 families, both of whom will be here this week. They know their names, so I can share them. The Waltucks, David and Karen Waltuck, who ran Chanterelle, beautiful little restaurant, very much like the restaurant in our story. And Peter and Susan Hoffman, Susan Rosengart, who ran an equally beautiful little restaurant called Savoy. And we had gotten to know them. Both of them have an older boy and a younger daughter, as do we. And so we had gotten to know them very well in that way you do in New York, where you sort of have alter egos, kind of simulacra families who share a great deal with you. Only their struggle had been to keep their restaurants going for 20 years, facing exactly the kinds of rent hikes and difficulties that the Kaplans face in our show. And so they were very much, the family as it finally emerged as a kind of surrealist amalgam of our family and those other 2 families, plus 16 other families who contributed unconsciously to it, plus our friend Ward Nettelstein, who directed it, who affected the character of the protagonist very much as years went on. Because one of the things that happened, Christine, I'm answering past the close, and I'm not giving you a chance to ask another question, so I apologize. But one of the things that happened very much is that in the first drafts of the play, and when I say there are at least, well, you've read, you know because you've seen it.
So I've been working at Long Wharf a little over a year, and in my time, I think I've read like 6 different drafts.
6 totally different drafts.
Like plot in some
right,
ways.
and those 6 drafts were the end of 94 different drafts,
right.
And in the first 88 drafts, David was more of an artist than he is in our finished show. More consumed with the details of his cooking, we had the dishes that he makes and the things he wants. And he was incredibly annoying in the way that artists can be. Artists are admirable people, but they tend to be obsessive and closed in on themselves. And we didn't, as I am, and he wasn't an appealing musical theater, musical comedy. And one of the things, this is a musical comedy really, wasn't appealing in that way. And then I realized, you know what, this isn't, yes, he's a wonderful cook, but above all, he's a great host. That's who our man has to be. And we realized when I said, the question really we want to ask is not what's on his menu, but how many people have gotten engaged in his restaurant. Which is very much like my friend Peter Hoffman who ran Savoy. That's his proudest boast, is 298 people, couples got engaged in the restaurant. And once we saw that, then the show began to make much better sense. That's versions 88 to 96 that you have read were more appealing as musical theater, I think, for that reason.
Mm-hmm. And when did Gordon Edelstein, who the artistic director of Long Wharf and director of the show, when did he come aboard in the whole process?
Gordon heard about the David and I were working together when I got a prize at the Westport Library. And, you know, one of the truths you discover as you become even mildly notorious in the world is that there's a whole host of prizes invented just to give them to people, to get people to pay to come see somebody get a prize. And I got one of those prizes at the Westport Library. And the thing is, you have to have people who are as shameless and needy as I am who say, oh, I'll take that prize, of course. I'll take the Westport Library Prize. Absolutely. What an honor, right? It is. It's a wonderful honor. It's a wonderful honor. We need deeply needy people. So I mentioned at the end of this beautiful, generous, and ceremony that I still have tear up about at the Westport Library. I mentioned that I was working on a musical. That's what are you doing next? You've done, all these things. And I said this, and somebody who was working here then heard it and reported it to Gordon. And Gordon, to my surprise, turned out to be a reader of mine, and of course a fan of David's. And he drove up to David's studio. He claims that I avoided his emails for a year, but I don't recall this at all. I just think we weren't ready to share it yet. But in any case, he drove up eventually. He came and he heard 4 songs. And to my shock and delight, he said, I'd like to be involved with this. I'd like to help develop this. Of the 4 songs we played for him, only 1 survives in the finished show. He assassinated the 3 other songs that he had been
How dare he?
seduced by. Only It's Never Raining in Seattle is the only song he heard that day that still is in the show. The other 3 songs were fabulous songs, actually, but he developed, as we both know, he is a director of brilliance and energy and empathy and gift for actors like none I've ever known. That he is impatient and decisive. When he doesn't like something, it gets guillotined rapidly and firmly, and never it comes back to life. So those songs. But I will add that that's also very typical of the form, as I've learned. I have graduate student DNA deep within me, and graduate students, whether we want to or not, can't. Chekhov once said that he had spent his entire life trying to beat the surf out of himself. When he came from a surf family, he meant the habits of obsequiousness and so on, being servile. And I have spent my entire life trying to beat the graduate student out of myself, because I come from a family of academics, and when we were given a task, we research it. But one of the things I did was to research the history of musical theater, even more than I already had done. And My Fair Lady, which I think here in New Haven, 60-some years, 61 years ago, they went, Lerner and Loewe went around from one Park Avenue salon to the next, pitching their songs and looking for money. And the 4 songs that they played, none of those made the final cut of My Fair Lady. Got a song called Say a Prayer for Me Tonight, Lady Liza, all these songs you never heard of, but they were their original songs for the show.
Yeah. So that's actually a good lead into my next question, which involves this process. So a friend of mine, Davis McCallum, who actually directed February House.
Wonderful show here.
A few years ago.
And then Public Theater.
Yes, and I was telling him about how we were working on the show up here, and he said this to me. I wrote it down because I thought it was so true. He said, the most difficult thing someone can ever undertake in their life is to love someone deeply, truly, and faithfully till the end of their days. And the second most difficult thing is to write a new American musical. I think that's right.
Well, we set out to write a new American musical about a couple struggling to love each other truly and deeply to the end of the days. So the 2 is highest degree of difficulty events. The mordant way of saying the same thing is Larry Gelbart's famous quote where he said, "What I wish for Hitler is to be out of town with a musical." And that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So what did you find were the most challenging things along this long journey to where we are today?
Well, you can see the circles under my eyes. I have a full head of hair and no bags under my eyes when I began this process. So that does, and I was also almost 6 feet tall when we started. So I've paid a price for it. What were the hardest things about it? Let me broaden the question, make it less egocentric. Why are musicals so hard, and new musicals in particular? February House was a wonderful musical that I would still, and I know the creators a bit, Gabe and so on, and they would still like to take another shot at it, right? Because they were learning as they were doing it. So here's my theory. There's 3 things I think that work together. One is the obvious one, that it involves acting, singing, bands playing. You have to tell as affecting a story as you do when you're doing a new straight play, but you have to do it through songs with singers. Now, both those things are different. You have to do it through songs so that the songs constantly advance the story, which is hard, and then you have to do it through singing actors, not actors. We have the most astounding ensemble of singing actors, but finding actors who sing as well as they act and act as well as they sing is incredibly difficult. We are blessed beyond words to, at the end, but this is at the end of 8 years, we have this extraordinary ensemble. Some of them have been with us since the beginning. Christina, the girl who played Anna, the wonderful Carlo's daughter, has been with us since she was 17 in the first workshop, and now she's considerably older but still plays the part well. She'll be a grandmother and still playing Anna in our show. So those are the obvious things that make it difficult. The deeper thing that I think makes it difficult, the kind of more metaphysical thing, is that the business of singing your feelings and thoughts is very counterintuitive and very artificial. It's an extremely artificial convention. We all know it, and we make fun of it all the time, right? When people burst into song in bad movies, and we all laugh, right? It's a very artificial convention. So the first thing you have to do is establish the terms in which that artificial convention will work in your show. And each show has slightly different terms that convention works. And Stephen Sondheim, and to drop the largest of names, but I once had the great pleasure of having a long conversation with him on stage, very much like this one, for the New Yorker Festival, and then I got to have dinner with him as well to talk about it. Sondheim once said, he said, opera is so easy. He said, I have no respect for Mozart, but basically that's what he was saying. Because everybody's singing all the time, right? What's hard when everybody's singing all the time, then you don't have to justify people leaping into song. Whereas in a musical, you have to, the moment, the arc has to be logical and satisfying. And what makes people begin to sing? Well, as I say, it's different in each show, but usually it's because they're in a state of emotional excitement or pressure where the only reasonable thing they can do is sing. So you don't say, why is he singing? You say, oh, I would sing too in that position. Finding those moments in a way that's emotionally credible and that still advance the story you're telling is incredibly difficult. So as you know, Christine, we have rewritten the beginning of this show, without exaggeration, 20 times. We still don't have it right. I still want to redo it. So that's incredibly difficult, being able to make that happen. And then I think that the other thing that makes musicals so hard is that they're simultaneously a very stylized form, right? They have to be, because people are stopping in the middle of their story when they're at the depth of a depression. Somebody says, you bitter, and then you start singing bitter, you start singing a song about being bitter, and you wait for the orchestra to start up. It's hugely stylized in that way, but they can't seem as stylized as they are, or they lose their emotional hold on us. So walking that line between things that are hugely stylized, in a good way, when I say stylized, I mean that are, have high style, right, that appeal to us, and things that are emotionally credible is extremely difficult. That's why I said the one thing I regret about this show, and I regret a million things that I have done wrong, because I always do, but specifically, this is a musical comedy, right? This is classic musical comedy. It has some very dark moments in Act 2, but it's essentially musical comedy. It resolves. The two things are always true about comedies, classic comedies. One is that the wise fool instructs the hero, which is what happens here. Carlo is turns out to be David's teacher. And the other thing is that the villain is forgiven, which also happens here. Those are two rules of classical comedy, and we try to apply them. But they're stylized. They're stylized. It's one of the interesting things, and I hesitate to call it audacious because it sounds like self-praise, but I still am startled and pleased that audiences don't seem to question it, which is that why the key moment in the whole story is when David comes to Carlo's Pizzeria in Act 2. And finds his Yoda on another planet who, to his surprise, instructs him, teaches him, reminds him what life is about. And I was always saying to Gordon, maybe we should justify it, right? Because David grew up there. David, after all, Bix has been out at the pizza place, so David could know the address. And we would justify it. And Gordon, with his immense theatrical bones, and Flair said, no, the audience will accept it. The audience will know that emotionally it's essential. It's part of the fable, that's a moment out of a fable. It's not a moment out of naturalistic drama. It's a fable moment. We have to trust the audience to go with the fable. And it seems that they do. And that's astonishing me. But So musical theater, this is one of my very long-winded answers, is fable and has to follow the rules of fable, which aren't the rules of naturalistic drama, but at the same time it has to be emotionally credible. It can't be all fable, or we're not interested in it. Guys and Dolls, maybe the greatest musical comedy certainly ever written, is a fable, and it calls itself a fable. It's the subtitle. It never occurred to me. It's a fable of Broadway, I think, is the subtitle.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's right. It is. It is. It's a fable of Broadway. And yet, if we don't actually have some real engagement with Adelaide's long engagement and with whether Sarah's going to go to sleep with Scott, we wouldn't care. If it were just Nicely Johnson and the Feud for Tin Horns, fantastic as those things are, it wouldn't be the great show it is. So walking that line between fable and real is insanely difficult. And even in a show like February House, which wasn't musical comedy, it was really musical theater of a different kind, you had to be able to accept that we had 7 people living together in a Brooklyn rooming house in the 1940s, some of them extremely famous, and we had to accept the kind of fable part of that, but we also had to make the real part of it possible. Yeah. It's almost as difficult as answering a question as writing.
You're doing great. All right, I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to open it up for you all to ask some questions. So, we're at the end, at least of this part of our process. Hopefully there will be another life for the show. But along the way, what were the real moments of triumph for you, where you really saw this thing kind of come together? What were those moments that made you really excited that you were actually, making a musical?
Well, as Christine knows, the process was unbelievably long, torturous, exhausting. I might say without flattery that Christine played a vital role. And every morning as we would work, I would get new notes from Christine. When you get notes from people, your first response is enormous resentment. Why is this person giving me notes? Stop emailing me. Please stop emailing me with your annoying notes. And then you'd read the notes and say, and there's an expression that I think may be my own, which is only take a note you know. In other words, when someone's giving you advice, there's like, oh, do this, and oh, fuck that. But then when they say, oh, that's true. That's true. I know that. I know that's true, and I thought we were getting away with it. I know that's true, and I thought we were getting away with it. And so Christine sent me more, damn, that's true, and I thought we were getting away with it notes than anyone else in the process. But the truth is that every time those things got better, it felt good. But the truth is, it was a big joke in our family, actually, because I would always come home and from here or from when we were working in workshops, and my wonderful wife, who was Claire in every way, it would say, how's it going? And I would start saying, well, and then my wonderful daughter, Olivia, who is Katie in every way, would say, Dad will say, I don't know exactly what we have. And that was true. I would always say, I don't know exactly what we have. And it wasn't really until the first preview, really, which was what, 3 weeks ago now, right?
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. And you were there, remember? And we kind of looked at each other and said, the whole world won't like it, but it kind of works. It kind of holds together.
We gotta play.
We gotta play. But it wasn't really until that first preview we said, oh yeah, this kind of has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it sort of relates a story, and the songs kind of fall in place. That's a modest appraisal of it, but that wasn't really until then. But the other, I'm being disingenuous. The other moments that were hugely positive were when David Shire, who's a wonderful man, fantastic composer, and has his entrails run deeper into American musical theater than almost anyone I know. No, than anyone I know. And I think that people whose entrails run deeply in musical theater would agree his entrails run the deepest. He was, if you can imagine this, the original pit conductor, the music director at Funny Girl, when Barbra Streisand raced. The guy in the pit playing the first time people played was David Shire. He was the second pianist on the Fantastics. Remember the Fantastics, that wonderful show that ran for 30 years? In 1959, David, fresh out of Yale, was playing the piano part in the Fantastics. He was the musical, wrote all the incidental music for Company, the great Stephen Sondheim musical. So we're talking about someone who's deep, deep, deep in the theater. And David, was instructing me, teaching me in a kind of Karate Kid-like way. But obviously I'm a very verbal person and capable of doing verbal tasks and linguistics. That's what I do. Words are my life. And at first, David and I would work together on lyrics. We would fight, sometimes violently, and we would compromise and work things through. And David would show me brilliantly what can be sung and what can't be sung. And it involves some technical things about open and closed vowels, for instance, but it also involves syllable round, lots of technical stuff that I didn't know. In my tap musical, I had not had to confront. So we both had our names on the lyrics, and then after our first workshop, David came to me and said, you know, these are your lyrics. He said, this is really your work, he said. So I'm taking my name off it. And that for me was the huge moment when David was saying, you know, you're good enough to do this yourself now after a couple of weeks. That was the biggest. That was the Karate Kid moment, you know. Oh, grasshopper, now you can go and write words. And for me, the thing that I'm most pleased with, and that I know is invisible to the audience, it's meant to be invisible, your technique should be transparent, should be invisible, is that, you know, I know when I'm tracking, when I know that in all of the things, it's one of the things that I learned by studying, one of the things that David and I talked about a lot. Anytime there's a kind of comedy song that involves some multisyllabic words, like espresso, for instance, right? Almost every second word in espresso is a 3 or 4 syllable word. It's immediately countered by a song like So Like Maybe, where there's 3 2-syllable words. And that there are 2 songs that are important in Doo-Wop Motel. There's 1 3-syllable word, and it's passionate. Because I wanted that one word to land as significant, passionate. And then Market Forces, there's 1 3-syllable word, and that's efficient, because that's to do with the market. So being able to have enough apprentice early, you know, I'm still an apprentice, but to begin to get the glimmers of mastery and see what 1-syllable words get you and what 3-syllable words get you, and why you should never have 2 songs that depend on 3 syllables side by side. That for me is the eternal satisfaction of beginning to be an artist rather than just a mere artist.
That's fascinating. I didn't even know that about the show. So
there's one song in the entire show that's composed exclusively of monosyllables. And that's In Then I'll Go, Sergio's love song. And that was very deliberate because it's the one moment in the show when Sergio is speaking sincerely. The one sincere emotion he has is his love for Claire. And I thought the way to communicate that is, this is a guy who's a slickster and a trickster in his speech. If he's just singing monosyllables, we'll feel inside. We won't notice that, but we'll feel inside, oh yeah, he really means this. This is the one sincere emotion he actually possesses. So that's the one song, the only monosyllables.
Oh, neat. Okay, so I'd love to open it up for your questions. We have, Kathy's going to be running around with a microphone, so if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand, and we will call on you. So let's start over here. Kathy?
Hi, let me first say that I truly enjoyed the performance, the acting, the singing, and the story.
Sure, thank you very much.
My one question is, why you put in where Claire would go to the hotel to meet Sergio? Was it to make the audience a little nervous or something?
I'm reaching out, it's a great question, and I'm reaching out to touch Christine's arm because it was of all the things in the show, it was the thing we talked about most, argued about most, tried in as many different ways as we possibly could.
And changed. I mean,
And
really
changed.
up until opening, we were trying different
Up
things.
until opening night, we were still rewriting that moment. So you're right to spot it as a kind of crux in the story. Quickly, in the last workshop we did, there was no scene with Claire and Sergio in the hotel room. The whole scene was David and Carlo in the pizza parlor, and when Claire re-emerged when It's Never Raining in Seattle, which I always found a very moving moment. She just comes on. We didn't know if she had slept with Sergio or not, and in a sense we didn't care, and another way it was none of our business. And I liked that feeling, right? We would never really know for sure, but she was coming home, and she didn't have to give us, she said something to us, she didn't owe us an explanation, right? We knew that she was coming home. I liked that. But almost everybody who saw that version of it was dissatisfied. And I don't mean dummies, I mean really smart theater people said, it's just unsatisfying. You want to know what happened between Claire and Sergio. That's unsatisfying. So then we had the idea of doing the split screen moment that we have now. But what would happen in that hotel room was extremely hard to know. The first draft I wrote of it was highly erotic. Anastasia Barzi actually sort of took off her clothes which was great for some of us, but seemed too much. I liked the audacity of it because, and it's a favorite quote of mine, Mike Nichols, the great director, once said, there should be one thing in every show you do where you're saying to yourself on opening night, I don't know if we're going to get away with that. Because that, it means that you're not playing too safe in that way. So I still like that. And then none of it seemed really to work. And then we thought, well, we'll just have her throw down the key. We won't have a scene in the hotel room. We'll just have her throw down the key. And that seemed too convenient, too. And so finally it occurred to me, without exaggeration, the night before opening, oh, I know, he knew all along what the motel was, right? In the Saint Duat Motel, where he pretends not to remember what it is. He knew it all along. And when he says that, inadvertently, then she realizes it's all a scam with you, right? You may be sincere, but you can't help yourself. You're a scorpion. You're going to sting me eventually. And then she would back out on that, because that seemed funny to me rather than melodramatic. And the scenes before had been melodramatic and not funny. I'm not satisfied with it yet, and if I had another go-round, I would try it one more time. The one blessing about it is that having them both on stage at once inspired David Shire to write that beautiful counterpoint, where she has the counter melody and sings David's here while he's singing I See Claire. That wasn't originally written. It's part of the genius of David Shire. When I said, could she sing in counterpoint with him? He said, yeah, why not? And then he overnight wrote that exquisite counterpoint melody, which makes the whole thing worthwhile for me. But you're right to spot it as a tricky part, and it's a part I will honestly say I don't feel we've mastered yet. And if we had another 6 weeks of rehearsal, maybe we would have found the right solution.
Let's go. I saw your hand go up like first. Here, wait, hold on. We have a microphone coming for you.
I feel the same way. I thought this show was absolutely fabulous, incredibly well casted. Every person really well. Sometimes you see plays or musicals and you say, yeah, this person, most of it was great, but here's all of it was great. I thought the scene at the motel was perfect. Thinking reality-wise, because I feel that sometimes until you don't do something, you don't really know anything. You still will think about it. I should have. And it
Can I, not to interrupt you, but I'll just tell you quickly. The other voice that helped me with that, exactly that point, was my wife. And I said, would you go to this hotel? She said, yes, but you wouldn't know what you were going to do until you were there. You would go not knowing what you would do. And she said it with such expertise that it set off waves of jealousy, because I expected her to say, oh, well, I would never go to that hotel room. I would never go to that hotel room. And the same said, oh, of course you would go to the hotel room. But you wouldn't really know what you were going to do until you were there with the man. And I'm still not sure where that comes from. But anyway,
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So the main question, my question is, where does this go? Where does this show go now? Where does it go?
Well, we would love to know that, but we don't know. We hope that we'll get another production someplace. I would love myself to, if we could get another production in another regional theater. I hate that word regional theater because it makes it sound provincial, but in a small theater like this, which is a joyful place to work. And Christine and I could start solving some of the problems, or not the problems, that are there. And I love it. I will say, and I have a slightly different set of interests in a way than my wonderful collaborator, David Shire. David's this is his life, is writing musical theater. For me, I'd love it to be my life, but it's a piece of my life. And I say this without, with neither false modesty, because nothing would make me happier than having a show on Broadway, nor with undue complacency. But being in a room like this on a Sunday afternoon and seeing people laugh at what I think are funny things, the things that Carlos says particularly, and moved by things that I find moving, is such a pure emotion for me. It's such a satisfying, contenting emotion that I know that if we were lucky enough to go on, it would just be more of that emotion, maybe on a bigger scale or in a different climate. And I feel so satisfied having had that contentment, that emotion once, that I'm, as we say on Passover, dying new. We don't need to leave Egypt more than once to feel that we've had a pretty good passage. But I'm the rookie in the whole thing, and I know that the vets are very much hopeful we'll go on.
Yes.
And I do too, but I'm just saying, I'm content.
Thank you. Let's see. Why don't we go over there, Kathy? Sorry, I'm making you do a stair workout today.
Yes, hi. I loved your story about adolescent rebellion through musical theater. And I'm wondering, with your heroes being people like Rodgers and Hammerstein or Rodgers and Hart, if you could go back in time and choose one song to share with, say, Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart from this wonderful score you wrote with David Shire, what song might that be?
Well, what song from this show would we play for Rodgers and Hart?
Yeah, that's my question.
What
Yeah.
a great question.
Thank
It's a
you.
terrifying question. Everybody said that Richard Rodgers was a genius, had the soul of a poet and the personality of a high school principal. So, he's not a fun person to share that. And Lorenz Hart was a poet, in my mind, a great poet, but had the attention span of a flea. So we'd be trying to, because he was always going off to have a drink or find a friend or do things. Which would it be? I think probably It's Never Raining in Seattle. I'm very pleased with that song because it does two things that I can't recall having heard before. One thing, it has a gorgeous David Shire melody, which was just a gift. David came in one day playing that music and said, I got this gift last night. I said, oh my God, that's such a beautiful gift to have gotten overnight. And I knew it once with a number. And what I like about it is that it starts off comically. It's never raining in Seattle with an absurd, preposterous statement. And then I hope becomes moving because it's about a father trying to reassure his daughter, as every parent does, not by telling the truth, but by telling a lie, by telling a reassuring lie. And I don't know another song that's where the action of the song is parents finding each other by lying to their children, which is, if you're a parent, is something you do end up doing inordinately often, not lying about crucial things, but reassuring, saying, trust me, it's going to be okay. So that would be the song that I would play for Rodgers and Hart. And also because I love Larry Hart's lyrics more than anything else, and he was not afraid of using long syllables in romantic songs. He did it very, very often, very effectively. And there are a lot of kind of long breath statements in that song. So that would be the one that I would choose. And maybe Slice of Life. No, if I were going to meet Rodgers and Hammerstein, I would bring them Slice of Life, because I like that song, the one that Carlos sings today. I like that song because it's a greeting card sentiment in some ways, make the most of your slice. But I think I choose to think, I want to believe that in the context it's actually saying, yeah, that's true. And that's what Oscar Hammerstein did better than anyone alive. So that would be the one I take to Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Thank you.
Good choices. I think we have time for like 2 more questions. Let's go over here. Sorry, Kathy. She's had her hand up for a little while.
My ticket stub, or my ticket, says that I was coming to see Table. So I would like to know why you decided to change the name. Because Table certainly fits the show.
So the title changed. When did we change it? 6 months ago? Not even.
Not even. I think
Not
like 2
even.
months.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
We changed it from Table to the Most Beautiful Room in New York. I will confess, now that we're coming towards the end of the run, I still have a great affection for Table as a title. And it was called Table throughout most of its history. I like the simplicity of it and one word and so on. And also because it's about tables. Many people who were friends to the show, at the risk of dropping a name, but he's a long Wharfian, Steve Martin, great comedian, wonderful playwright, who was a real friend to the show, said to me, I love everything about the show, he said, but the title isn't intriguing enough, because if you're looking through the listings in the Sunday Times and you see Table, you say, and if you see, because that's the title already of the song, The Most Beautiful Room in New York, you want to know what that is. Why is they calling it The Most Beautiful Room in New York? And Steve is so long and savvy that I was struck by that. And I made the mistake of sharing it with Gordon Elstein, and he said, that's true. It was a note he knew, that our title was a little too cryptic, wasn't immediately expressive. And I said, well, what about Carousel, right? Okay. Well, Carousel is a great title, why not Table? And he said correctly, well, carousel immediately summons up an image in your mind. There are horses moving, there's music playing. Table is just flat. Table's just flat in every sense. So we debated it back and forth, and David Shire preferred the most beautiful room in New York, and Gordon preferred the most beautiful room in New York, and I think it'd be fair to say most people at Long Wharf preferred, including you, preferred the beautiful room. And I finally felt that though I was a bit of a diehard for Table, that Long Wharf and everybody here was going to such incredible lengths to serve our vision and to make it possible for us to they were serving and enabling us to share it. And I felt that modest deference was the best approach. I even wrote a piece about why I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, it's on our website, so
Yeah.
if you want to check that out, you
But
can.
why I thought it was a good idea. And I think that it's a legit title for the show too. And it's the thing about titles is plays make their titles. Just a quick story, and then I know I'm going on too great length, but the David Shire again. I was talking about how long in owns his knowledge of musical theaters. He was a student here in New Haven at Yale, and somebody came up to him and said, I got tickets for a new show that's trying out tonight. Do you want to see it? And he looked at the tickets and saw the name and said no. And the title was My Fair Lady. And he thought that was such a bad, embarrassing, empty, what does it mean? My Fair Lady means nothing. It means nothing, right? And that great show makes its title. And I think that that's truer. That's true more often than not about it. But I still like it.
I like Table.
Good, thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's all we have time for today. But thank you so much.
Thank you.